a little introduction. So I'm Rachel, I'm National Account Manager at TSB. But you might have also noticed I've got Laura Davies on the call today. So she's one of our video BDMs and will be the contact for some of you. So if you haven't had a catch up recently, it's definitely worth reaching out to Laura or your local BDM. So we have already implemented some criteria enhancements this year. But today is all about fraud awareness. And actually, this is a great time to be refreshing on some of this information. It's been a really busy couple of weeks, and this is the prime time that we could miss something through rushing. So we'll spend the next 30 to 40 minutes upskilling and refreshing on some common tricks to look out for. And there will be a short quiz at the end and a chance to ask some questions. So let's have a look. I'm just clearing some things at the top of my screen. First of all, let's have a look at how much fraud TSB prevented in 2025. So 731 cases, which was preventing £174 million of potential losses for TSB. So that's a lot of clients potentially impacted, but what are the impacts of mortgage fraud? So for customers who've been impacted by third-party fraud, this can be a very stressful event for them. Similarly, it could be staged income or inflated income, which may impact them financially, and lenders would be giving them potentially unaffordable debt, making them financially vulnerable. This would then impact the quality of life, impact their credit profile, and they're at risk of repossession. If we facilitate fraud and don't identify it, we are enabling further organised crime, providing funds to facilitate human trafficking, drug trade, and terrorism. For a business, the impact of fraud or not identifying fraud would result in an increased regulatory focus, cost preventing and investigating fraud, and reputational damage, resulting in more financial impact to the business. There's lots we can do to prevent fraud, and you play a vital role in fighting fraud. You're the lender's first line of defence, and hopefully this session will build your awareness or act as a refresher in such a busy market. So we'll look at the different category of fraud the different fraud categories and the current trends that we are seeing in the industry. And we'll look at some real life examples of documents that have been submitted to TSB on cases. You'll be able to put the learning into action, trying to spot the red flags on the documents. We'll also look at the ways you can protect your customer, your business and the wider market, as well as ensuring you know exactly how to escalate any fraud concerns. In the interest of time though, the additional learning around complex fraud we might not get round to, but your TSB BDM has access to all of this and be able to arrange a meeting if you want to go through this further. So fraud categories can generally be split into two: fraud for property and fraud for profit. First party or soft fraud is committed by the customer, and this is the category you'll be able to play the biggest role in identifying. The customer is usually looking to obtain a mortgage that if they were using the truth, they would not be entitled to this mortgage. So we usually see false employment or inflated income, which is then supported by false documents. Credit abuse and manipulation, so your customer may avoid giving you previous addresses to avoid picking up adverse credit, for example. Scheme abuse, the most common one here tends to be backdoor buy-to-let. So maybe if the customer won't be able to get the lending on a resi based on affordability, perhaps they'll try a buy-to-let, as this will be self-funding, and then their intention would be to move into the property. Or deposit fraud, maybe someone's manipulating the true origin of the deposit. Then we have the second category, which is fraud for profit. And this category can cause the most significant losses. So let's focus on a couple. A mortgage mule. So this is a person who allows a fraudster to use their identity to front a mortgage application. The mule could be a person in financial difficulty, a student, a person on a visitor's visa, which is due to expire soon. So, for example, a potentially vulnerable person. The mule would be the customer on the application and would be left with the mortgage debt in their name. Meanwhile, the fraudster would retain control of the property and would often use it to facilitate other fraudulent activity, so benefit scams, white goods, people trafficking, etc. We have had examples of this with customers. One of the common ones tends to be people working in a nail salon. So in those scenarios, the owner of the salon manipulates the employee to purchase a property, tends to be buy-to-let. The salon owner would then take control of this property, and the employee may never see a single penny from the rent achieved, but then as a result has got a property in their name, leaving the salon owner to reap all of the reward. Broker and solicitor fraud rings. So this may not seem too common, but it does still happen, and a lot of the other bits of fraud for profit, so identity fraud, etc., would involve some sort of broker solicitor fraud ring, so people working together. And that could be fake land registry documents, intercepting personal information and using it to their advantage. So we always encourage customers to be vigilant. So we saw an example of this recently where the application had just progressed to offer and the client called the broker because they'd received an email from the solicitor and the solicitor was requesting the funds as soon as possible by bank transfer. So they rang the broker just to check that that's all okay and they can send the deposit over. So the broker found that a bit strange because they've only just gone to offer and it would probably be later on in the process before they would be asked for the funds. So went a little bit further and asked the customer to email over that email from the solicitor. Broker had a quick look at that email, noticed that all looked okay, apart from on the actual email address that it had been sent from, there was one character which was slightly different. So actually this was a fraudulent email, and had the customer have sent those deposit funds, they would have lost all of that money. So just by being vigilant, understanding the home buying process and how the deposit wouldn't have been requested normally so soon after offer, the broker was able to recognise those red flags and actually prevent the harm. So let's have a look at some emerging trends. So I've already mentioned staged income. In an environment where affordability is stretched, this type of fraud increases. So we've had examples where customers had a recent pay rise. So that meets our policy as long as it starts within the next 3 months and we've got a letter from the employer. But in this example, the pay rise was staged. So we managed to catch this one before completion because we asked for 3 months of the bank statement, so current 3 months. And what we could identify from that is the amount of that pay rise that they'd already had was transferred back to the employer. So completely staged. So our lending policy allows future income starting in the next 3 months using a new signed contract as income evidence, but we do always ask for a covering letter or the email trail stating enclosed is your new employment contract, as that allows us to do further checks to ensure the income is not staged. The next emerging trend shows the importance of having that covering letter or email. So AI, you're probably sick to death of hearing about AI. It's everywhere. And actually, it's a really useful tool for us day to day, but it's also very easy to create payslips that are not real. We do have deep fake detection tools that are emerging within the industry, which can help us spot these deep fakes. But we can try and identify them ourselves as well, because you'll tend to see that they've got spelling mistakes, incorrect aligning, and zooming into the documents and the pixels will help uncover these. The third one is scheme abuse. So I mentioned that earlier, and we see this regularly buy to let. So it's worth doing your own checks. So for example, checking affordability on a resi, would it still fit if they did a resi application? What's the current property like? If they're doing a backdoor resi, maybe they don't have the funds for the 25% deposit on a buy to let. So they're completing a resi with the intention to let it out. Where do they live now? Those kind of additional questions will help you to identify if the transaction is genuine or not. And backdoor brokers. So this is one of the most shocking ones for me at the moment, and it is happening right now. So this will be where someone has charged a customer to arrange a mortgage where they're not actually a regulated advisor. So they'll charge excessive fees, they'll normally target a specific group of people, and they'll act as the customer and apply directly to the lender to arrange the mortgage. They'll sometimes use falsified documents to obtain a larger loan that's affordable, and that means that the customer is paying a high fee and, unknown to them, fake documents, which then causes them issues in the future as they'll have CFAS registered against them, which will prevent them from obtaining a mortgage. We can identify this type of applications through spotting the red flags for the falsified documents, and they generally use the same email address, that of the person pretending to be the broker, and the applications come through from the same IP address as well. So we say this is an emerging trend and it is happening now. We had an example yesterday. So a broker's emailed in to ask us because they've been impacted by a backdoor broker. So they wanted to know if they came to apply to TSB because they've got this CFAS registered against them, would the case be declined? So while this is impacting lenders more directly and the customer, they tend to be lenders who've got digital end-to-end processes so that the fraudster can just go on the system and act as that customer. It's good for us to highlight to you because you might hear customers speaking about a broker who's charging high fees, or maybe the customer's been promised a high amount of lending relative to their income, and you can report this to the lenders. So we do actually have an advert, which is a recent example of a backdoor broker. So I'll let you have a good look at all of that. We have changed the broker's name, the company name, but you can see a couple of things on here. So we've got borrowing 9 times wages. There's also some spelling mistakes. There's some American spelling in there. And actually the email address is a personal one rather than a company email address. And the fee that this backdoor broker was charging was in excess of £2,500, and in some cases up to £5,000. So they're offering 9 times wages, so we can assume that they're potentially going to inflate the income using fake documents, because I'm not aware of any lender yet that will use up to 9 times income. And they do tend to target communities as well. So this recent one was circulated within the Manchester Jewish community, and it did impact some customers. So this trend damages the reputation for the financial industry. So it is really important for us to be vigilant and report any concerns to the lenders. So let's have a look at some of the red flags that you can look out for. Again, it could just be a refresher, but it's really good time now, while everyone's really busy, to remind ourselves of these flags because they can easily be missed. So basic payslip. Have a look at the format of the payslip. Is it in line with their profession? So maybe they work for a really big corporate company and actually they've got a blue banner payslip. So you'll see a copy of a blue banner payslip shortly, but they're the ones that we tend to see most commonly in fraudulent documents. Does the year to date add up? So not all lenders will ask you to do a year to date calculation, but actually it's a really interesting way to find out that if anything actually untoward is going on or they've manipulated the figures. And again, if they've been paid in cash, these are the sort of things that we don't always check. How are they paid? Is it backs? Is it faster payment? Is it cash? You wouldn't really expect a CEO of a business to be paid in cash. Deductions. So again, check all of these because the lenders will want to know if there's something that's committed that needs to be put on the application, but also what are they like? Are they exactly the same over the 3 months, or do they differ? And that'll depend on their income and what they're actually paying for as well on those deductions. So your higher earners expect to see a pension deduction, some sort of health insurance, car allowance, etc. So it doesn't mean that it's a fraudulent document if there is no pension deduction, for example, but what it is worth is just asking that extra question. I can see you don't pay into your pension. Is there any reason? Because a lot of the time you get younger people who are trying out an employer with the intention that if they're settled there, they'll then start the pension deductions, but that then changes the whole story of the scenario. So salary credits, I mentioned this earlier, have a look at that. So I know we're interested in the income and the outgoings, but double check. Your compliance will probably say you need the 3 months pay slips, the 3 months bank statements. So make sure you do those comparisons as well, because you'll see this in a little bit. You'll see that it'll say bank gyro on the pay slip, but actually when that payment's gone in, it's a faster payment. So again, going back to the CEO role, you wouldn't necessarily expect them to have a faster payment. It would be a bank gyro, especially if they worked for a big corporate company. So new employment, I mentioned earlier, we will take these 3 months in advance, but it's worth asking some extra questions. What was the previous role? Is it very similar to the previous roles they've had? Or have they gone from a £21,000 salary to a 121,000 salary? And again, it could be very good reason. It might be somebody who through college or university has been working for hospitality, and actually now they've gone to fulfill the role that they've studied for, and that was the salary jump. But it's just asking those extra questions. Second job, so I mentioned before, in a slightly more restricted affordability environment, we'll take the second job income, we'll take 100% of it, but the things to ask is it sustainable? Is it in line with the job that they're doing already? So for example, someone who worked in a school, they might do lunchtime cover, and then they might do the lollipop lady, if that's the technically right word for it anymore. Those kind of would align. But if we've got a teacher working 5 days a week and then they're going to work in a bar or a restaurant until 2 a.m. in the morning or through the weekend, it's probably not going to be it's not going to be sustainable. So does it look inflated, and does it feel right to have that second job? Another little trick you can do with those ones is check the affordability if they didn't have the second job, because have they conveniently got that second job because actually before the mortgage wasn't affordable? But if they only need a little bit or none of that extra income, then you're probably good to go. And then family businesses. So we do see quite a lot of fraud in there, and it's not necessarily intent, it's more family members trying to help, but doing some little checks, like checking the business exists, what is the job they're doing within that business, does it sort of support what that kind of business is doing? And also for us, just a little key and tip, if you've got someone who's employed by a family business, just make sure you select the right drop down for that employed family business, because then we do ask for extra documents as well. So source of business. So Teams is great. We can reach a lot more customers across the country, but also it can be an easy way for somebody to lie about the application that they're doing. So where did that referral come from? Have they already named another customer that you've seen? Have they just picked you up because they're trying to get something past you? So are you confident with that relationship? And gifted deposits. So we mentioned deposits before. Is it reasonable? Is it quite a substantial deposit that you wouldn't maybe expect from that kind of family member? And can you verify as well the source of those deposits? And then property. So again, we mentioned this, the buy to let, are you confident it's a buy to let or a resi, making sure on affordability it would fit on resi if they're doing a buy to let and it doesn't feel right. And is it being sold on the open market? So if it's not through an estate agent that's been sold, again, it might not be fraudulent. It could just be that your best friend's nan is selling a house and they want to avoid the estate agent fees, but they could also be trying to hide something within that transaction as well. So we'll move on to the next slide. So this is your fake documents. So you will see that it's 37 pages long. I'm not going to cover every single document today, just in the interest of time. But like I mentioned before, pick up with your local BDM and they can go through some more documents for you. So these are actual real examples that were submitted to us on cases, but they were picked up by our fraud preventions team and subsequently declined. So we'll have a look at some payslips first of all. So we've got a little bit of a scenario, but it's really important for me to point out that actually these are redacted. So all the personal information has been taken off. So don't worry that there's no name, there's no company name. It's supposed to be like that. So this applicant is a restaurant worker and their annual salary is 24,360. So have a look at this. Hopefully you can see it and it's big enough for you. Maybe jot down a couple of areas you might ask some additional questions on. So I'll give you a few seconds, just have a quick look. Might need to zoom in or get your readers on. And again, if you're doing these with your BDM, they'll go through each one of them and you can test yourself on what you would have spotted on these. So the first one is this is the blue banner. So I mentioned that before. So would that company use a blue banner payslip? They're commonly used with smaller businesses. If they work at a corporate company, they might not use these, but actually they are the most common ones that we see on fraudulent cases. So on this one, the income amount doesn't actually match what has been keyed. So I'm going to guess that you can't see it good enough there, but actually if we times the amount by 12, we get a slightly different answer to what is on the calculation. The net pay, so if you could see that there, it's a very round figure. So would you expect to see that? And then the pay period at the top here, you can see it says Jan 2024. It's normally not a written month, it is normally just the digits on there. And again, we mentioned year-to-date checks before. So if you had enough time to write this down, the year-to-date calculation is 21,277.37. And we know this is a January pay slip, there's a couple more pay dates to go. So think about any extra additional questions you might ask here. So again, we mentioned pension deduction before. So on this one, there is no pension deduction. Would you ask any additional questions? So again, just because there's no pension contribution doesn't mean it's fraudulent, but it's definitely worth asking some extra questions. So we've got another payslip here, and this applicant works for an ice cream parlour. So what can you spot? So you'll see at the top, that's a bank statement extract, and then the payslip is over here on the left. Employer's name's been removed on purpose. So we've got a blue banner payslip again. So you can see that common theme coming through. And you can see the bank statement. So again, before I was just mentioning to you, use the information you've got. and actually the net pay isn't matching what's gone into the bank account. And the date doesn't match either. So we've got 29th of Feb and we've got the 1st of March on the pay slip. So there might be a reasonable explanation for it. Might be a small company with a bit of delay in the payment going through because it was a faster payment. But it's definitely worth asking that extra question. So again, I said to you before about the payment method, it's not always something that we would check because we're looking for the income, we're looking for the outgoings, we're checking the year to date. But this is saying it's going in via BACS and actually we've received it into the bank account by faster payment. You can see how easily that they would be missed. So this one is really interesting and I've kept this one in for today because this is an NHS payslip. And these kind of payslips we can get very complacent because it's NHS and we would assume it's all above board. However, as you can see here, it's not always true. So the scenario on this application, we've got joint applicants, Mr. is a doctor and Miss is a nurse who's currently on maternity leave. And just as a reminder, TSB do allow applications for customers currently on mat leave, and we would ask for the last full pay slip before they went on maternity leave if they're returning to work on the same terms and conditions. So I'll let you have a look. Again, it's quite small. Hopefully you'll pick out a few things that I'll tell you about now. And the benefit of this one is both applicants work for the NHS, so what we can do is some detective work and look for the differences on each one. So the first one to spot is that the ink date, we have one in capitals and one in lowercase, but on NHS payslips, these would always be in capitals. The next one is the tax office. So this can be a bit more difficult to spot, especially if you have got clients across the country and you're not aware of the area that they're working in. So it's good to check and good to be aware of it. So Miss is working in Princess Royal Hospital and the tax office is showing as North West Midlands and Shropshire. However, the Princess Royal Hospital isn't in Mids and Shrops, so it's the incorrect tax office. So we know that the applicants are a doctor and the nurse, but we only have basic pay. So that might be right for applicant 2 who maybe was getting ready for mat leave. But generally, if they're working in the NHS, they've probably got income made up of shifts, weekends allowance. So worth an extra question here as to, obviously you only get basic pay, do you ever work any shifts? But it's always about that extra question. And then another search you can do if you're unsure if you're being presented with a fraudulent pay slips, checking on the General Medical Council. So applicant 1, who's a doctor in this scenario, wasn't actually on that register. So going above and beyond and putting your detective hat on. So I'm just going to click through. So as you can see, we've got some more pay slips and we do have some more at the end. But I'm just going to go through to 16. Give me one sec. But you'll have probably seen on those previous ones I've just clicked through again, we had some more blue banner payslips, etc. This is the last payslip we'll look at. It's a good one, as it shows by just doing an extra check how we can prevent fraud. So this applicant is working for a fast food establishment. The monthly income on this payslip is much higher to the comparison to the rest of the year. So the monthly payment is higher. The tax deductions are 0. But this month the income has just gone over the allowance threshold. And actually, if we went on Companies House, we can quickly see that this employee is a company director, but it turned out they didn't have a full year salary and dividends, so they were trying to use income as employed to get the mortgage. So let's move on to some bank statements and tax returns. So again, quite small. Have a quick look at this one and see what you can pick out. You won't see any personal details or things, but what would you sort of say on this one or ask an additional question about? So we've got some quite standard transactions going out on debit cards. But actually we've got a blank one here, so we can see all of these. We've got the debit card transaction description, but this one is blank and it would never be blank. So we can see that some sort of redaction or something's happened with this bank statement. And again, we've got a Lloyd's bank account here. Bank account, etc. has been taken out. Anything that you maybe would ask a few extra questions on here. Give you a bit longer. And we've got spelling mistakes. If you can see it, assurance is spelt wrong. So that's a common thing that we see on fraudulent documents. There's been a change of address, so we can see at the bottom that they've changed their address, but what we need to check, going back to the credit manipulation, is that the application also matches all the previous addresses as well. And they do have a high balance, so we can see the balance at the bottom here is about, I can't even see this, but I think it's about 64,000. So actually, most people will probably move some of that out into a savings account. May not, but it's worth asking that extra question. And then we've got a Virgin Money bank account. So have a quick spot. Quite obvious, this one. So the logo, it's all a bit squashed in that top corner there. And actually, we do have a copy of this pay slip as well, but the pay date was different. So we've got a 31st and a 1st as well. We didn't look at that one. So we've got a TSB bank statement here, which is an interesting one because obviously I'm here representing TSB, and these were cases that were TSB mortgages, and they decided to submit a TSB bank statement as well. I'll give you a couple of seconds. So we've got the layout. If you can see, we've got some of the letters are in bold. So the I's on this statement are all in bold, which wouldn't happen. Part of the logo is missing there, and you might say, oh, well, maybe it's just been cropped out on the scan or something, but nothing else is cropped out on there. Salary reference. So on this one, it just says reference pay, and it's a bank giro credit. And you would probably expect to see a little bit more detail on there as to whoever it is that they work for. And then the digits are all misaligned. So you can see now it's been circled. They're all just not quite right there. So the decimal points aren't aligned. So it's definitely been altered in some sort of way. And then we've got another one. So I'll just give you 10 seconds to have a quick look at this one. You can see it's a Santander bank statement. So it was a TSB mortgage application, Santander bank statement. So this is a little bit of a trick. So there's nothing actually wrong about this bank statement. This is just to give you a little bit of peace of mind. So on the surface of this one, you might submit it and think, no, there's nothing wrong. I can't see any of the red flags, etc. But we obviously do our own checks in the background, and lenders do share information. And Santander confirmed actually on the statement, this was never there, and it was never on the original statement. So actually the statement's been redacted to show that pay going. So let's have a quick look at some tax returns as well. So if I tell you that this one was a nail technician, is there anything that might stand out for you here? You probably have spotted the income's pretty high. And again, it might be a real top-rated nail technician who's doing however many nails per day, working 7 days a week. So it might be plausible, but it might just raise that extra red flag for you. So always make sure that you're checking the income is aligned with the profession as well. Now this example is a window cleaner. So again, like we've just said on the other one, check the income is plausible for the field that they're in. And then there is something else on this one. I'll just give you a little second, maybe on this side, and it depends how big it is at your end and what you can see on there. But there's actually a spelling mistake on this one, and it's really not obvious. HM Revenue and Customs is actually spelled HNI. And some good little tricks here. So it's good to point out that anything underlined will have a corresponding figure. So if you can see something underlined and there's no corresponding figure, then that's going to raise alarm bells for you. And then the other thing you can do is if you've got a PDF document, if you right click on a PDF document, it will tell you if something's been modified. So that might be a good way for you to figure out if someone's trying to influence or inflate their income. Okay, so that's all your documents. Like I said, we've got a load more that you can go through, but in the interest of time today, because we do have a little quiz as well, we'll carry on through. So when you're looking at your case, it's really busy at the moment. Always take time and consider these 5 steps. So take your time, look at the documents, put your detective hat, check the format is matching, ask questions if you need to, look at dates, are they all matching, are all the fonts the same, figures, alignments, are there any inconsistencies that you want to ask an extra question for? Is it plausible that the income deductions all match the type of career that they've got? And is the market rent achievable in the local market if you've got a buy to let? And is there any explanations that the customer can provide for any irregularities that you might see? Strengthen your due diligence, so cross-check, use Google, use Companies House, use Endol, use due diligence, and also social media. Look on LinkedIn for that customer, because if they're saying maybe they're a professional, actually you might uncover on LinkedIn that they're doing something completely different. And again, it might just be that they've not updated their social media, but it just gives you that chance to ask some extra questions and be really sure with the application. And be aware for family names on companies, because that's quite a common thing as well. So sometimes we'll see that a limited company, especially when they're all stacked up, they can be little triggers that you'd think that people wouldn't use the family name, but often that happens. Right click your PDFs to check its authenticity. And stay vigilant, recognise those common fraud types that we've talked about, the income fraud, deposit fraud, credit abuse, scheme abuse, impersonation fraud as well, and escalate as early as you can. So usually it's a gut feeling that you get with these cases that are not quite right. Inform your line manager, your network's fraud team, or your BDM. So even if it's a small concern, it's always better to ask and maybe get some extra checks done before you put that case in, and you can put it in confidently. Report your suspicions to the FCA and walk away. Disengage yourself from those suspicious clients and protect yourself and your business. So we're all responsible for reporting suspicions of fraudulent activity or examples of poor practice, and this reporting is taken very seriously at TSB. So remember, going back to what I said before, you're the first line of defence. You may have concerns, customer concerns, which could be overstating income, fake documents, inconsistent stories. You might have broker concerns, so you might hear how from your client how they've been encouraged to inflate their income, perhaps someone manipulating lending policies, maybe the customer saying that the other brokers told them to pay off these debts, but they don't have any intention of doing so, but as a result it would then fit on a lender's affordability assessment. It could be a client encouraged to lie about the property usage. So recall what we were discussing before about the impacts to the customer that this could have. They might become over indebted, and then as a result might end up having credit issues. So ensure you report fraud following your network procedures. And you may also have BDM concerns. They may encourage you to favour certain products that aren't actually suitable for the customer. They may encourage manipulation to get the case to fit. That all needs reporting to the lender so they can investigate further. Again, going back to the backdoor brokers, report them, because it is impacting our industry, and we're losing that that confidence for customers, because they think everybody's charging £5,000, or they think everyone is out to get them, but obviously we're not. So make sure you report so we can investigate. We do need to work together to keep the industry clean and avoid potential harms to customers, businesses and lenders. So that brings us to the end of our PowerPoint. So hopefully it wasn't too much death by PowerPoint. We do have further learning that we've mentioned before. So reach out to your BDM and we can go through the additional examples. We can go through more fraudulent documents and complex and property fraud as well. Just before we go over to our quiz, just a little shout out that our broker trust survey launches tomorrow. So if you can take the time to complete this, if you've placed a case with TSB over the last few months, because we do really value your feedback. So I'm going to see how techy you are, and if you've been on one of these with us before, I'm just going to stop sharing and open another screen up. So give me a sec. In fact, what I'll do while I'm going on to this one, I'll just open it up for any questions anyone might have at this point. And if you do think of anything, you can always ask at a later date. I'm good to carry on. So Mohan, do you know how many people we've got on the call at the moment?
It looks like 22 in the meeting.
Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do I'm going to share my screen because it should do. Actually, it might give the answers first of all. The reason I'm asking that is because I'm going to ask you all to participate in this Kahoot quiz. I don't know if you've ever done them before. They're quite good, but it is going to give you a code that you'll be able to join on, and it's just a quick quiz, five questions. Like that. And it does that, and you've got the right screen open. Here we go. It's over here. So it's going to give you the details for you to load, and there is a prize for the winner. So you've got to answer the question correctly, first of all, and then the quickest as well will give you the most points. So you can either scan the QR code, or you can just Google Kahoot and then it'll say join a quiz, and you can put the game pin in. So I will wait for you all to join. If anyone's got any problems, just shout out. There's a couple of minutes. Right, we'll go. Anyone who's struggling, just shout out. If not, I'm going to press start. Okay, so remember, answer it correctly, and the fastest thing gets the most points as well. So I've made this really tricky for you. You've only got 10 seconds to answer. Amazing. So we've got 13 people got that right. So it's somebody who is not regulated. They're just using the customer's information to front an application. Okay, so you've got Ramesh at the top on 878. So let's see the next one. So you've got to be really quick. This one's a bit easier because it's just true or false. So a trickier one there. We've got 9 people with it right. So it is committed by the customer. Yeah, that's impacted us. So Ramesh, you're doing well. You're still sat at the top. So we talked about emerging trends, and there was 4 different ones. Fab. Got A, emerging trend. Oh, Ramesh, you've just gone down to second. Damon's first now. So what can you do with a PDF document to see if it's been altered or not? Yeah, right click on the PDF and then it should give you a list of any alterations, and then you can ask additional questions. Oh, we've got Nick zooming up fast there. So this is your last question. It's a multi-select, so 2 potential red flags when you're checking pay slips. So there's 2 answers. So it's the blue banner. That was the common one we always see with fraudulent pay slips. Again, it doesn't mean it's a fraudulent pay slip, but that's the one that we see the most commonly. And then the net pay being an exact figure. So again, it could be right that they get a net the net pay is exact, but it's definitely worth asking those extra questions. So let's see who's on top and we can get a prize out to them. So we've got Craig in third. In second, we've got Damon. And in first, with all 5 questions right, which is pretty impressive, is Nick. So, Nick, I will get your details and I will send you a little prize. But hopefully that just sort of gave you a bit of a taster of what you've learned there with those sessions. We have come to a close a little bit earlier at 20 to 12. So does anybody got any questions at all, or did you want to see any more pay slips or cover anything else?
You said at the start of this that, you know, you identify quite a lot of fraud. I think it was 731 cases. How many of those were you alerted to by the broker?
I haven't got those stats, but I could find out for you if you want me to.
It was just wondering how many brokers are finding cases for you. You know, have you got a general feel for it?
I would say it's very low, the amount, because you guys are really good at spotting these issues anyway, so you probably wouldn't then try and submit it with us, or it would have been identified a little bit earlier. So these are
Yeah,
probably
true.
cases that, yeah, so I would imagine it's pretty low.
Okay.
But there's other stuff that you can be reporting on, like I was saying before. This is a common one I used to get. So I've been BDM in the last 3 years. And it used to be that one of my brokers has turned this customer away because they just can't find a lender that the scenario is going to fit with. It doesn't meet policy, it doesn't meet affordability. And then a week later, they'll get a message from the customer saying, thanks for not helping me, but Joe Bloggs down the road has done it for me and I've got my mortgage offer. Well, is that right? If you've done all your checks and you can't do the lending, we should be reporting things like that as well, because are they manipulating the systems? What's going on?
Yeah.
Because if you've done the right thing and you've declined that application, we're then letting it go through with whichever lender anyway.
Well, you could find out who the lender is and then just let them know.
Yeah, absolutely, you could. And like I was saying before, we do really take it very seriously. We're only a really small lender and it does impact us. And like I was saying before, lenders do speak to each other as well, which is how we picked up on that Santander bank statement, just by asking the other lenders extra things. So there is some things that you're just never going to spot, as long as you've got all the right behaviours, etc. But we've got a fail safe in the background as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Greg?
No, I think that's all from me.
Yeah. And anybody else? Everybody likes to go quiet in these scenarios. If you do think of anything, you can either send it over to me, send it over to Laura, or send it via Mohan to come to me, whatever you want to do. And like I said, don't forget we've had quite a few criteria enhancements already. So BDM will be able to share that with you. Hopefully you like the quiz. And Nick, I will get your details to get your prize to you.
Thanks, Rachel. That was fantastic. Looks like you had a fairly good turnout as well. That's really good. Very encouraging.
Yeah, brill. I CPD certificate, someone has sent that through. We were booked in for an hour. So what I will do is make sure I get something sent out via Mohan to say that you've done your hour CPD.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you.
No worries. And thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of your days.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
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 Bye.